Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, welcome to IANT Youth's new event, Lovestruck Part 3, #NoFilter. Thank you so very much for coming. For those of you who are here early, thanks so very much for being patient with us as we had to delay the start of the program. Inshallah, we will begin the program, but before that, I'd like to invite Brother Murad Ayachi, IQA Junior this year, to recite a few verses from the Holy Quran, inshallah. Brother Murad.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا يستوي أصحاب النار لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم. هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر. سبحان الله عما يشركون. هو الله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم. صدق الله العظيم.
I found an intro for you. I'm going to do it. Okay. Jazakumullah khair, Brother Murad. Inshallah, with us today for our first speaker of Sister Haleh Banani. Haleh Banani is the first female to host a program for Al Fajr TV called With Haleh, which combines the principles of psychology and Islam to help people reach their full potential and overcome their challenges. She has a master's degree in clinical psychology from the University of Houston, graduating magna cum laude. She has over 10 years of experience in diagnosing mental and emotional disorders and administrating programs of treatment. Internationally renowned writer, Sister Haleh Banani.
All right. Assalamu alaikum. MashaAllah, you all are an amazing audience to be here and waiting. Do you want to stand up just a little bit and stretch? Stretch. Can we stand up? Stand up, stand up, stand up. Come on, stretch. Because you've been here for hours and I'm so impressed. Okay, terrific. Now if you could kindly have a seat. All right. But I really do appreciate you staying. We need a little help with the mic. Please, somebody. All right. Yeah, it's not staying. Do you want to put my purse? All right. Okay. All right. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. I'll be very honest with you. When I first got the email about talking tonight with you, and I saw some of the topics were gender issues, pornography, masturbation, and I just thought, a part of me freaked out. And I thought, I don't know if I want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. I would prefer, and I thought I would play it safe. I said, I'll just talk about self-esteem, and I will let, Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda deal with all of that. But as I thought about it and reflected, I felt that these are topics that are avoided. A lot of times they're avoided by our parents, by the community, by a lot of the shuyukh, and I felt that I felt obliged to talk about this. And so to start off, I want to tell you that I've been doing this for the past 15 years, alhamdulillah, doing clinical psychology, and I've had tons of cases. So the people that I'm going to tell you about are not made up stories. These are case studies that I've had, but I'm not going to share the names for their privacy. But I'm going to share with you 3 stories, and I want you to reflect on these stories and see what connects them and what is the underlying issue. Okay? So the first story is I had one client, she was 16, a 16-year-old from an ultra-conservative family. Ultra-conservative, and the parents homeschooled her out of fear of her interacting with boys, so they homeschooled her. She was constantly at the masjid because the parents were extremely active. She was always in the masjid, never interacted with any boys. Now, when I got to see her, what happened was that she was caught sending nude pictures of herself and having some very inappropriate texting that was going on. Okay, so that's the first story. The second story was of a 19-year-old boy. His mom came in as a client who had memorized the Quran. He had led Taraweeh prayers and unfortunately started experimenting with marijuana and became addicted. I mean, he was addicted to it for 3 years. And this obviously destroyed his family and his life and his future. The third story is of a 14-year-old girl that I treated from a very wealthy family, very wealthy and very religious family in the Middle East. And she started questioning her sexuality, her sexual orientation. And this created so much anxiety within her that she tried to commit suicide, okay? And I don't say these stories to you to make you feel depressed or to make you feel hopeless. The reason I share this is that none of us are immune. Regardless of how much knowledge you have, how much background, how religious your family are, all of us can fall into error. And it's just about following the hudud, the boundaries of Allah. Okay, so what do you think ties these stories together? What was missing from their lives? What do you think? What was missing in their life that would cause someone to do something like this? Any wild guesses? What is it? There wasn't balance? Okay, so like maybe a little bit too much, like too much strictness, too much religiosity. Okay, what else? Not having communication. How do you think they felt about themselves? Low self-esteem, very good. All right, so they had all of these issues. So these are the things that that they face, reasons for their behavior. One is lack of love. A lot of times people do these crazy things because they don't feel loved. And as much as parents try to be there for us, but maybe whether it's the criticism, maybe it's the high expectation, a lot of times teens don't feel loved. Maybe a lack of attention. Then there is the lack of self-esteem, like you were saying, escape from boredom or strictness, peer pressure, not feeling accountable, and the media. Okay, so all of these are issues. So we're going to talk about each one of these. Okay, now getting love in all the right places, in the right and wrong way. Usually, people seek love and attention. The best way to get it is within the family. Now, I know I've had a lot of clients who come in, they're in their early 20s, and they talk about how they feel alienated within their own families. They're not getting the love, the attention. So if you don't have that within your household, what you need to do is try to seek it in a healthy environment. Maybe start getting involved with the community work and getting that kind of acceptance and love, even if it's not within your parents, but surrounding yourself. So this has a lot to do with the friends that you choose. Now, a lot of times the wrong way to get the love and attention has to do with these online relationships. Okay, so people are feeling lonely. There's tons of people that they can connect to, and they can remain anonymous, right? You can take on any identity and basically start up this relationship. Now, what do you think is the problem with that? What is it? They're not themselves. And a lot of times, and I've had actual clients who've admitted that they don't even put their own pictures, right? They don't put their own pictures, different bio. So it's all fake, right? And so you're creating this relationship with someone that you don't even know who they are. And so many issues come up. And I can't tell you the number of calls I've gotten from worldwide, from people who've gotten stuck in these kind of relationships, and they're stuck. There's sometimes the people are married, sometimes they are young adults, and they've gotten addicted to these kind of relationships. And another way that people search for this is through dating. And I just had a client last week, and she's a young Muslim girl. She's in her early 20s, from a religious family, but she found herself getting involved with a young guy, in high school. And this relationship has now ruined her marriage, because she is constantly comparing the guy that she was dating with her present husband. And so we need to be really careful about these kind of relationships, because we don't realize how much they impact us in the future. Okay. Now, as far as self-esteem there's a lag. So, okay, there we go. So self-esteem, it's formed by what your parents, what your teachers and adults say about you. So if you hear things like, you're such an idiot, you stupid, you lazy bum, right? If you hear this, does that sound familiar? No? All right. Or you bum, you lazy, you stupid, whatever it is that you hear, that starts becoming your sense of identity. That's who you see yourself as. And self-esteem is basically your self-worth. How much do you feel? How valuable do you feel? And it also has to do with your body image. We have a lot of people suffering from anorexia, bulimia, just, you compare yourself to what models look like, and you want that, and it affects your body image. So it's so critical to feel happy about all your, whether it's your defects, whatever Allah has given you. And it has also to do, your self-esteem has to do with your self-talk. Do you know how many words a minute we talk to ourselves? Take a wild guess. 1,000? Wow, okay, almost 600. 600 words a minute that we talk to ourselves, and 85% is negative, okay? So what we're saying is exactly what our parents told us. So if we said things, if we heard all of those negative talks, we're saying it to ourselves as an adult. And what I want to tell you is that you can change this programming. I've had so many individuals. One client came in and she was suicidal. I mean, she had heard so many negative things growing up that she wanted to take her life, and we worked on this self-esteem, and we worked on the self-talk, and she transformed. Mashallah, like within 4 sessions, she transformed and got a new lease on life. Okay, so the next thing is peer pressure. Let me first ask you, how many of you have gone to public schools? Most of you? Okay, any Islamic schools? Okay, I myself went to public school in Houston, Texas, and I know the challenges and the peer pressures. When I go to the Islamic schools and I give a talk and I talk about peer pressure, their peer pressure, anyone in Islamic schools? Okay, all right, maybe you know what I'm talking about. Any peer pressures in the Islamic schools? There are? What kind? What kind of peer pressure? Anything? Well, what they told me is they debate over what madhab or what, just it's not the same as what you face in the public schools, right? So the peer pressures that you have can really draw you. So as far as choosing good friends, it's critical. I was just talking to one young lady and she said, it's all about the friends you surround yourself with. Because if you have a good, strong support group, then you're not going to be affected as much. And it's about ways to resist peer pressure. So what are some of the peer pressures you face in the public schools? What do you think? Yes? Okay, yeah, taking off the hijab. Okay, so it's about looking good. Why don't you dress like us? Why do you have to put that on? And I want to create some scenarios. So think of some scenarios, and we're going to see how you can deal with it. So what could you say in a situation like that?
I tell them it's who I am. I'm Muslim and alert.
Okay, does it affect you, or do you feel strong when you're dealing with it?
Actually, I feel stronger. I like it that they ask me and are so interested in my religion.
Mashallah, mashallah. So you have that strong self-esteem, which helps you in a situation like this. What other situations? As far as self-esteem, or not self-esteem, as far as peer pressure, what scenario can you think of? Made up scenarios. I know it doesn't have to do with you. It's just made up scenarios that we're coming up with. What do you think? What if someone says, come on over, guys are hanging out, we're having a party, and you know there's going to be alcohol? How do you deal with a situation like that? What is that? You just say, I'm not going? I got to study? Okay. All right. Any other scenarios you can think of? Okay. All right. So it's good to plan ahead to know what you can say in these situations, right? All right. The next thing is the media. So we've got the media, and it's hypersexual, right? We have a hypersexual media, and there is an agenda. The agenda is basically explore, demoralize, glorify promiscuity, okay? So all the things that we're exposed to, we find, all the things that we're exposed to affects us. It affects the way we view ourselves. Now let's take homosexuality, okay? And this is something that for the past 15 years, there has been an agenda to get this in the forefront of our minds, to make it seem, to normalize it. Do you know that in the DSM-3, this is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, that it was classified as a mental disorder? mental disorder in DSM-3, and it's the most powerful lobbyists. And they lobbied against this, and they got it passed, and they removed it out of the DSM-3. So DSM-4, it was completely removed. And so trying to present it as something very normal, it's affected a lot of the youth. I actually have had several clients who've come in. I had a female client who was really concerned about her sexual orientation. She was concerned. She's like, I'm not sure, although she was married and she had a child, but there was this kind of insecurity, doubt, am I not? And the way we looked at it is that what happens is recognizing something as being sensual does not necessarily make you gay, right? Because there's so much being done. Let's say the models and the movies and all these shows that are being presented, it is created to show sensuality. And to recognize something as sensual doesn't necessarily make you a certain orientation. And I had actually a young man in Europe, a Muslim brother in Europe, who had the same fear. He's like, I fear that I may be gay. And so we started talking about it. And what we realized is that it was just a they kind of misdiagnosed themselves. And what it was basically is that they had a lower self-esteem, and they admired, whether it was the men admiring the other men for being just really handsome or admiring the females. And this kind of admiration and low self-esteem made them think that they may have a different orientation, subhanAllah. So, any questions, any comments on this? No? Okay. So as far as pornography, there's so many biological effects. Now, it is done so commonly, and so many people have addictions to it. I mean, there is a site, it's called Your Brain on Porn. I recommend anyone who is having problems with this to go on it, and they've done so much research. It gets 20,000 hits a day. That is how many people are suffering from the addiction. And what people don't realize, they see this as a pastime, an amusement, and they don't know what is happening to their brain. It's actually changing the makeup of their brain. And they're sexually conditioning themselves. They're sexually conditioning themselves to only be aroused in front of the computer with that image. And this is having a grave effect on them. And it becomes actually a behavioral addiction. It's a behavioral addiction. And you find young men, as young as in their early 20s, they're having actually erectile dysfunction. They have erectile dysfunction, and in the age of like 20s, they're having to take Viagra in order to be able to perform. So this is affecting them, and there is a reward circuit. So everything that you enjoy, let's say, whether it's that cheesecake, whether it's the ice cream, whether it's watching these things, it is firing up your reward circuit, okay? And with the dopamine is what makes you feel good. And so this internet is providing, it keeps the dopamine surging. Why is there so much dopamine coming? It's because there's endless novelty. You're constantly getting new images, and as soon as your dopamine goes down, you click another image, there's more dopamine, and again, and it becomes more and more shocking. Actually, with exposure, the more exposure you have, the less dopamine. And so it's just like any kind of addiction, right? When someone is addicted to alcohol, the first time they try it, maybe with one beer bottle, they will get tipsy. And as they have more and more, they build resistance, so it takes more and more. So the same thing happens with porn, that as you get exposed to it, you need more shocking and longer period of time. I had one brother who came in for therapy that he was addicted to it, and he was watching 5 hours a day. And this was a married man, and he was addicted to it. And we worked on it, and within a few months, alhamdulillah, he was able to go from 5 hours a day to maybe like an hour in a month. Okay, so it is something that definitely you can overcome, and it's important to see how it affects you, okay? Because now I'd like to ask you about some of the things to find out if you are actually addicted. This is the way to find out if you are addicted or not. First of all is the tolerance. The tolerance. Have you noticed that you need more in order to get that same fix? So it's about wanting to watch more and more. Withdrawal. Now this is with any addiction. Anything that you're addicted with, you think about it and apply this. Withdrawal. If you try to stop, if someone tells you from tomorrow, from today, no more, just don't watch it. Because a lot of people say, I'm in control, I'm not addicted, then see if you could do this, where you stop it and see if you go through withdrawals. Okay? And withdrawals is that feeling anxious, feeling edgy, feeling like, something is missing. Difficulty controlling your use, where you decide that you're going to stop, but then you fall into it again. You decide you're going to stop, and then again and again and again. So this shows that you have some kind of addiction. And then the negative consequences. Even though it's having a negative consequence, I had one client just a few days ago who is getting a divorce because her husband is addicted to pornography and she just can't take it. And this is causing the breakup of the marriage. So if you find that there are consequences and you are still continuing with it, then there's a problem. Neglecting or postponing activity. So instead of getting together with your friends, instead of going to the mall or playing soccer or whatever it is, you're doing this. The next is the desire to cut down. You want to cut down, but you're not able to. Spending significant amount of time obtaining or using porn. Okay. All right. This is kind of addiction I hear. All right. So how does this addiction occur? So it's about the dopamine, and you may not be so interested about the biological aspect of it, but what it helps to know is that this is as strong of an addiction as cocaine. And just like you would probably not experiment, most of you wouldn't experiment with cocaine because you know how addictive it is. This is the same thing, because it creates this a biological change in your brain. And the nickname for dopamine is the craving neurochemical. It makes you crave more and more. And as you're exposed to it, the more you're exposed, the more shocking things that you need. All right. Now, how is this affecting us? So you're hearing all this. You may not be so interested. Maybe there's fewer sisters who are addicted to this. And you may think, why am I putting so much emphasis on this? It's because I see this in my clients. I get letters from brothers from all over the world who have this as a problem. Whether you want to admit it or not is a different thing, but it's really an issue in our ummah. And the emotional and psychological effect is that it lowers your self-esteem, right? Because a person, they want to do what's right, but they're not following it, and so it lowers the self-esteem. And there's a lack of congruence. So you have one belief, but you're acting out on another, so that always affects you. And it can lead to a lot of violent fantasies. So on the one hand, you have brothers who are exposed to all of this, okay, these extreme things. On the other hand, you have sisters who are absolutely in many ways protected and guarded, right? Some sisters were saying that, we never get the talk. We don't get the talk. So what is happening is that when these two individuals come together in a marriage, what happens? There is destruction, okay? So there's definitely unrealistic expectations of look and performance. So you have these surgically enhanced ladies, right? And so when you get exposed to all these images, this is what you classify as attractive and beautiful. How can an average sister compare to that? So you will not find your average sister as beautiful, and this really creates a problem. There's also a feeling of inadequacy because you see that performance and you can't live up to it, and so it affects you. There's the erectile dysfunction and relationship problems and damages marriage. I mean, you may not see that. You may think marriage is way down the road, but it will come up. And I've had brothers in their 20s and 30s tell me they started when they were 14 and they wish they had it. They wish they had taken care of their addictions so that now they wouldn't have so many problems in their marriages, okay? So as far as self-esteem, when you respect yourself, when you respect who you are, then you're not likely to fall into those errors. You know the example I gave you as far as like sending inappropriate pictures or texting and doing all these stuff. When you have self-respect, you're not going to fall into that error, and you'll do what is right instead of peer pressure. Like you said, the sisters are coming up to, like some of the people at school are telling you, take off your hijab, but because you have that self-esteem, you stand up for yourself and you don't allow it to succumb. Or even like what you said as far as people drinking, if you feel strong and you have a strong sense of identity, you're not going to succumb to it. And not being bullied by others, okay? And really what comes out of this is the congruence between your beliefs and actions. So you know what's right, and you know if you follow what you believe in, then you have that sense of self-esteem, you don't feel guilty, and it doesn't destroy your moral compass. All right, so let's see. So is there, do you have any questions or comments?
How can you make your marriage more productive, more fruitful, and more peaceful?
Okay. There's research done by John Gottman. He is like the king of relationships. And he's done research for 40 years, and what he's found is that the main thing in a relationship is having a friendship. So if you can have a friendship with your spouse and have that, the same thing that you do with your friends as far as showing respect, having fun with them, and that definitely has an impact. And it's not about not having problems, but it's how you have the problems. So it's about knowing how to have the arguments, being respectful, not having contempt. So these are the things, and I think it's really important to read up on it. I think a lot of times we don't have good examples. We have parents who are either fighting or ignoring one another, and so we don't have the good examples. So we need to read up on it and come into the relationship with certain goals and rules, inshallah. Okay. All right. Let's see what's another one. Go ahead.
This one?
But you know what? That's a fatwa. I think that needs to be crochet.
How to stop it?
Okay.
Our next question is, how can one who is addicted to masturbation stop masturbating? What are some steps that one can take to overcome this addiction?
Okay. All right. As far as the halal and haram, that's the sheikh's area to address, but I know that different madhabs have different rulings on it, and there are some madhabs that make it permissible and other madhabs that do not. And as far as if you have any kind of addiction and you're trying to overcome it, it takes somewhat of behavioral therapy to be able to overcome it. And a lot of times when you're trying to stop something, it's a lot harder than to start. For instance, like you want to start exercising, there's something to show for it. But if you are trying to stop a negative behavior, what I suggest is setting up a goal, and each time you have the urge and you control yourself, because really our whole goal is to control our nafs, right? If you give your nafs whatever it is asking for, it is like a spoiled brat. Right? What happens if a little 2-year-old gets everything they want? they get out of control, right? So the same thing with our nafs. If we give it everything that we want and we crave, then it's going to be out of control. And we got to tame that nafs. It's like a wild horse that we have to tame. And so with that in mind, if you set out like a goal that you're going to decrease it, you can keep yourself accountable, and each time you have the urge and you protect yourself and you put some kind of a mark to show, you know, like 5 times I was tempted to, but I didn't. And so there's something to show for that effort. And like that brother that I worked with that had that 5 hours of addiction, what we did is find out like what are some of the trigger points. What are the trigger points? For him was being alone and looking at the, you know, at the computer alone. So we tried to avoid that. So if there are certain things that you're being exposed to that is arousing you, so you need to stop that. So stopping the exposure, and then trying to get support. Have friends who are going to be good influence and have a good impact on you. Okay, sure.
Okay, our next question is, how should parents give the talk to their kids? At what age should it be done, and how important is it? For many of us, our parents never touched this topic with a 10-foot pole, so what is the best way to approach this for our future children?
Okay, I think it is critical to have the talk with your kids, because you have to have an open dialogue. And I think that too many, especially female clients that I've had, never had the talk, and they come in, you know, what happens actually, sometimes they get a talk, but it's not the talk they're looking for, right? It is a talk about scaring them away from intimacy as a way to ensure that they're chaste. So many times girls go into the relationship being very fearful of this act, which is an act that is a beautiful act. It is rewarded by Allah when it's done in the right environment, when it's with your spouse in the marriage. And I think that's what's so critical about parents to address, not to scare their kids away from it, not to make it like dirty. I have some clients who really are emotional when they get intimate because of all that they have been bombarded with by their parents, that it's dirty, it's bad, it's not good. And I think it's important to address that it is a good, beautiful act. Allah would not make something halal if it was not beautiful and good, but as long as it's done in the right context. And I think that's what we need to emphasize, and not to be fearful of it, and to be able to, and I think the time to address it is at the age of puberty. You know, when your kids are reaching puberty, they need to be told what to expect, and make it something natural, beautiful, and easy rather than something you fear.
Our next question is, as mentioned, movies and TV contain so much sexual material. Is it best to avoid TV and movies as much as possible, or is there another way to avoid being affected by this material?
I think that awareness is really important. You need to be selective in what you're watching. I don't want to be unreasonable and say do away with TV completely. If you have the strength to avoid it, that's great. But for many people, they have that affinity towards watching TV and movie. I think be selective. Be selective in what you watch. And I think having that awareness, knowing that there is an agenda in media, that they are trying to demoralize, they're trying to make things so acceptable. I mean, look back to the movies way back in the 50s, like let's say I Love Lucy. They wouldn't even put the husband and wife in the same bed. They would have separate beds. And now you see, you know, how far things have gone. So if you're just aware of this and you protect yourself and you're selective about what you watch, I think is a better way to go.
This question is saying, if I know that my friend is in a haram relationship or relation that's not good for them, how can I approach the situation? Can you answer that question?
Okay.
The next question is, how do you keep a good friend from having a haram relationship with the opposite gender? I have tried, and this is the person speaking, I have tried almost everything I could to keep my friend from engaging in it, but nothing has worked so far. As a friend, I do not want to see her get hurt. What are my options?
Okay. Well, I think you're a good friend, that you're feeling for her and you're trying to advise her. But just like what I was telling you, as far as that dopamine, this is an addiction. When you meet someone and they are giving you compliments and you're enjoying your time with them, all of that is creating that good feel-good hormone. And so that's very hard. It's very hard to get them to see what is right and what is wrong. I think you've done your share. You gave them the advice. All you can do is, you can make dua for them and maybe try to encourage them indirectly by taking them to, let's say, conferences, lectures. Let's watch, some videos online, things that would try to soften their hearts. Try to soften their hearts, but still be there for them, because they may eventually come back, inshallah.
So the next question, and I guess we can reword this, is if someone is bothering you or something, like how do you get guidance out of texting, being pushed in a situation? How do you get out of it?
Just tell them to stop. Let me see. What if a child in the future struggles with gender issues?
It's kind of, we discussed.
Okay.
Can we talk about it again?
All right.
Okay. The next question is, what if my child in the future struggles with gender issues? How would I approach the situation?
Okay. Generally, individuals, we have seen a pattern that individuals who have gender issues, there's been some level of possibly sexual abuse. There's a pattern of that, and you have to be very watchful. First of all, what I want to address is make sure you teach your kids about protecting themselves from this kind of abuse. And I think that there's so many sisters and even brothers who have been violated by sometimes uncles, sometimes cousins, sometimes friends of the family, and this actually leads to a lot of this promiscuity. And I think that it's important to address, like what I was saying, that a lot of times you can see things as being sensual, but it's not necessarily means that you are of this orientation. It's very important to just have that open dialogue and try to help them to understand that better.
So the next question is, how do you distinguish between being friendly with the opposite gender and flirting, especially if they are non-Muslim and you're just trying to act normal?
Okay. All right. I'm guessing a sister is saying this, and sisters, you know when you're being flirty, right? You know when you're flirting. And I think deep down inside, we know exactly whether it's the way we smile, the way we lean in, or whatever it is, we know that. And I think you have to kind of question your heart. And if you're aware that Allah is watching and there's accountability, it will guard your interaction with guys. So you can interact, you can have that. It doesn't have to be something abnormal, but just be careful about falling into that area. And I think each and every one of you knows when you fall into it, right? It's with that extra giggle, with the personal, it's the compliments a lot of times. And what's interesting is that there is a lot of infidelity I have seen within Muslim couples. And so I started doing research on this. I started doing research, and I saw a lot of non-Muslim psychologists who were writing about this and how to avoid infidelity. And do you know the list that they gave? I started reading this. It was saying not to have a friendship with the opposite gender. This is a non-Muslim psychologist saying this. Not to share personal information. And I found this, oh my God, this is exactly what Islam tells us. Not to give compliments, okay? So these are the things that actually can open up the door to whether it's different kinds of relationship or in the future infidelity.
Last question for right now.
Is it okay to be friends with gay people?
You want to skip that, or let's go to another one?
Okay.
And our last question for this question and answer session. Again, we will have another question and answer session after Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda's appearance. What was the question? How can awkwardness be avoided with the opposite gender but still remain within the bounds set by Islam?
Yeah. I believe that you can interact with the opposite gender by, like what we were just saying, as far as not getting into the flirting and doing the inappropriate things. So you can share, you can exchange information and ideas without it falling into the haram category of flirting and getting into inappropriate things. I hope that.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Haleh Banani. Inshallah, Isha is at 10 p.m. At this time, we will go ahead and allow for a short break before Isha to allow you to make wudu. We have some snacks for sale back in the kitchen area that our sisters are working very hard on, so please go ahead and give them a visit, inshallah. And we will have Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda join us after Isha. Assalamu alaikum and see you soon.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is Abdul Nasir Jangda. I want to say salam to everybody there in attendance. I'm very sorry I wasn't able to make it in person. My sincerest apologies. I had a family commitment that I was not able to move around. So the brothers and sisters at IANT Youth requested me either way to basically record a little bit of a video message where basically I was able to share just some thoughts with you. It's a really, really difficult topic to talk about. And being there with the audience, you would figure maybe it's a little bit more awkward talking about it with people. But that being said, at least if I was there conversing with you, it's not as awkward because I can kind of see, your reactions and kind of how the topic is being received. So this definitely makes it that much more awkward because I might say something super awkward and you're going to feel it super awkward and I'm not going to know that you think it's really awkward. And yeah, so basically this should be a lot of fun. So the topic is a sensitive topic. It's a very, it's a really serious issue. But it's one that a lot of people deal with. So that's why I didn't want to be able to share at least some thoughts on this particular issue and topic with all of y'all that are there today. I'm going to go ahead and kind of build my premise. I'm going to build my topic. What is Islam? What does being Muslim mean? Why are we all here? Islam is a way of life. And Islam is comprised of believing with the heart, attesting with the tongue, and then the actions of the body living it out. And what's really interesting and profound about that is that the heart is at the core of everything. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. That on that day, the day of judgment, no one's children, family, wealth, material will help anyone إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ, except for the person who comes to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a good, pure heart. And so the heart is at the core of everything. What comes out from the tongue is a reflection of what is in the heart, and the actions of the body are also a testament to what is in the heart. They say that al-imanu ma waqara fil qalb wa saddaqahu la'amal. That iman and faith is something that takes root within the heart, and then the actions are the testimony, are the testament, are the validation of that faith and that belief that is within the heart. And it is for the same exact reason that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, وَمَثَلُ كَلِمَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ كَشَجَرَةٍ طَيِّبَةٍ أَصْلُهَا ثَابِتٌ وَفَرْعُهَا فِي السَّمَاءِ تُؤْتِي أُكُلَهَا كُلَّ حِينٍ بِإِذْنِ رَبِّهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example of faith and iman and belief like a tree, a beautiful, magnificent, amazing, remarkable, huge tree. Allah says that its roots are very, very firm, deeply entrenched, where you cannot remove the roots of that tree. And far'uha fi sama, but its branches reach all the way up into the sky. And that's the tongue and what emits from our tongue. Tu'ti ukulaha kulla hinin bi'idni rabbiha. And it gives fruits at all times, all the good deeds and all the good actions that we do. Now the reason why I'm talking about this is because the heart is the core of the issue. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ فِي الْجَسَدِ مُضْغَةً إِذَا صَلُحَتْ صَلُحَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ وَإِذَا فَسَدَتْ فَسَدَ الْجَسَدُ كُلُّهُ أَلَا وَهِيَ الْقَلْبُ. The Prophet ﷺ said there is an organ within the body. If it is good, everything else coming out from the body will be good. And if it is corrupted, everything else coming out from that body will be corrupted. And then he said, know that it is the heart. It is indeed no doubt about the fact that it is the heart. So the heart is the core of everything. All right, that's very important for us to understand. But now, what is the nature of the heart? The heart in and of itself is very it's very malleable. It's very, it's not constant, it's not static, it fluctuates. The heart, it changes and it fluctuates a lot. That's the interesting thing about the heart. Even in the Arabic language, the heart is called qalb, right? Which comes from the root word, which means for something to turn. And it's called that because the heart constantly turns and it changes. Now, if the heart constantly changes and turns, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he had a dua, he had a supplication where the Prophet ﷺ used to say, Ya مصرف القلوب صرف قلبي على طاعتك يا مثبت القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك. He used to say that, O turner of the hearts, turn my heart towards your obedience, and O solidifier and confirmer of the hearts, solidify my heart upon your deen, your religion, the way of life that you have given me, Islam. So what we understand is that the heart by nature turns and changes a lot. So now what turns and changes the heart? That's the question, right? So if you got something that's connected, to a wheel, and because of that it's turning, but what turns that wheel? The handle that turns that wheel. So what is the handle that turns the wheel of the heart? That makes the heart turn. And that's what's interesting. So I started off by telling you that based on what's in the heart, that is what will come out from the body. But similarly, what we take in, but not so much the body, but what we take in through our senses is basically what turns the heart and what feeds into the heart. If you talk about Allah, you read about Allah, you listen to talk about Allah, your heart will turn towards Allah. And if you listen to, a song, you watch the music video, you read the lyrics of it, you listen to the music of it, then your heart will incline towards that song, right? So the heart, that's the reality of the heart. Now, the reason why I'm talking about all of this is because we need to make sure that we are protecting the condition and the state and the situation of our hearts. Because the Prophet ﷺ told us, Al-qalbu bi'a'un, the heart is a container. And the access points to the heart, the things, the channels that lead to the heart are what we look at, what we hear, what we see, what we talk about, what we think about. That is what feeds into the heart. A lot of and this is exactly why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran told us, قُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ يَغُضُّوا مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِمْ وَيَحْفَظُوا فُرُوجَهُم. This is very interesting. وَقُلْ لِلْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ وَيَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. In Surah An-Nur, Allah subhanahu, Surah number 24, Allah tells the believing men and the believing women, lower your gazes and guard your modesty, your chastity, right? Protect yourself from behaving inappropriately when it comes to, the other gender. When it basically protect yourself from inappropriate sexual behavior and inappropriate sexual conduct. Now, protect your gazes, lower your gaze so that you can protect your decency. What's the connection there? Because when you look at something, that will feed into the heart. And then from the heart, the bad action will come out. But if you lower your gaze, you protect your gaze, you don't look at something bad, you protect your gaze, then your heart will be safe and nothing bad will come out from your body. But if you look at something bad, then that evil feeds into you, that darkness fills up your heart, that container, and then evil actions will come out from there. We all know that engaging in extramarital, premarital relationships is not allowed and it's not appropriate. Most people know that. And we've talked about that a number of times. There's been previous youth events where we've talked about that. I know I was a part of one of those events. And generally speaking, people understand that. But one thing that's very problematic that we're dealing with a lot today is that there seems to be something that wouldn't be as public as going out with somebody, or it wouldn't be it's not as physically involving as actually being engaged in a relationship with somebody. It seems to be very limited in its scope and very private and very contained, but it is equally, in fact, I would say it is even more dangerous and more detrimental. And that is basically the evil of pornography. Nudity, pornography is something that has become a standard part of our culture, both visual and audio. What do I mean by visual and audio? I actually want to touch on the audio part first because I think that we're always constantly negotiating, right? We're always minimizing. Well, at least I'm not doing that. Well, at least I'm not doing that. So the person who's not watching pornography is like, well, at least I don't watch pornography. But you might listen to music, a specific type of music where, whether it's it's implying rape culture, or it's talking about women inappropriately, or it's talking about engaging in sexual behavior. When you listen to that, you're feeding that darkness, that information into your heart. And that will eventually lead to greater corruption. Similarly, when you look at nudity, so again, I want to start with the things that we don't consider to be problematic at all, unfortunately. When you listen to bad types of music and bad lyrics, that shamelessness, then that basically will corrupt your heart, which will lead to more corrupt actions. Whether or not you right now think it will, you could swear to yourself, I would never engage in that. But there's always a beginning. There's always a beginning. There's always a first step. There's always a gateway drug. The second thing is that, okay, I don't watch pornography. At least I don't watch pornography. But then what type of movies do you watch? What type of TV shows do you watch? Right? Do they have nudity in them? Do they have sexual conduct in them? If they do, then that is also inappropriate, and that will lead to greater things. And then lastly and finally, and one of the biggest dangers and epidemics of our time is pornography. Consuming pornography. And look, we all know that it's accessible everywhere. On the internet, on your computer, on your tablet, on your phone, it's accessible everywhere. It is one of the largest entities on the internet. And it is something that people access with great frequency. Unfortunately, very unfortunately. And I cannot stress to you enough how detrimental it is. Sister Haleh Banani, who's here, is going to talk about it from a psychological and scientific perspective, and I wouldn't talk about that. She's the expert, and her insight's going to be invaluable, very, very necessary for all of us to pay attention to. From an Islamic perspective, there is no way, shape, or form that it is permissible in any way. That's the fiqh. From a spiritual tazkiyah, purification of the heart perspective, it is extremely corrupting to the heart. It is desensitization to sin. It is motivating yourself to commit more and more sin. And what's very interesting is that it's, as she's going to talk about the addictive nature of pornography, the Quran also identifies as sometimes certain sins like backbiting, gossiping, lying, alcohol, gambling, and this type of sexual misconduct as well. These are all types of behavior that are spiritually also noted as being addictive behavior, where there's no engaging in it once, but it's something that will keep going on and on and on and continue and become a bigger and bigger and bigger problem as you go along. Let's talk about some of the ramifications. What are some of the evils of it? You are corrupting your gaze. You are corrupting your hearing. Thereby you are darkening and polluting your heart. This will lead to more evil actions. It leads to a lack of khushu' in salah. If you ever struggle to focus in your prayer, even be motivated to pray, enjoy your prayer, that's why. Do you feel disinterested when reading the Quran? You hear everybody talking about how amazing the Quran is. Every time you pick it up, you can't read it for more than like 60 seconds. Well, that's exactly why. It corrupts the heart. When the heart is dark and full of all that corruption, there's no room for nude and light. And so you have to distance yourself from these things. It will affect basically it takes away the sweetness and the enjoyment and the pleasure from the good blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the disclaimers I always make about this discussion, because a lot of times young people feel like we just make everything haram and we're not allowed to do anything. Sex is a natural part of a human being's life and needs and desires, and Islam fulfills that through marriage. It doesn't deny us that. It doesn't prohibit that. But when you engage in this type of behavior, you deprive yourself of the enjoyment and the pleasure and the benefits of all the blessings in your life, no matter what they may be. You know, fiqh-wise, When you watch pornography and you masturbate in those situations, you basically are not even in a pure state. You require a ghusl, you require a shower. You cannot pray in that situation. You can't go in the masjid in that state. You completely deprive yourself of anything having to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now let's talk about the solution. What's the solution? Again, Sister Haleh Banani is there. She'll talk about the more practical solutions. But spiritually speaking, 5 times a day prayer. Why do I say that? Because if you have to pray 5 times a day, you have to be pure those 5 times a day, spread throughout the day. That'll automatically start taking away a lot of the time and the motivation to engage in this type of behavior. Watch pornography and masturbate and all this stuff. It'll take you away from that. So praying 5 times a day. Number 2, strengthen the heart. Strengthen the condition of your heart. Fill your heart with light, with nur, with iman. Read Quran every single day. I don't care if you read 1 line or 1 page, but read some Quran every day and then read the translation of that verse every single day. Come to the masjid. Have a regular set thing. Maybe some of y'all are really busy. You can't get a ride to the masjid. You don't have a car. Come to the masjid once a week. Number 4, find some good company. Find good company. Find good people to hang out with. Right? Find people that encourage you to be better, to become a better person. Number 5, engage in some type of physical activity. This is probably a little bit more related to the advice that Sister Haleh Banani will give you, but spiritually, Islamically, we also have this. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to walk a lot. He would swim. He would do archery. He would ride horses. Right? There was a lot of physical activity in the life of the Prophet ﷺ, in the lives of the companions, and it's strongly encouraged within Islam, within the religion. Find some physical activity, whether it's playing basketball, playing volleyball, going for a jog, going for a run, lifting weights, hitting the gym. Find some good physical activity, inshallah, to engage in. It'll improve your health, and it'll also keep you away from engaging in negative activity. Lastly and finally, there's a beautiful thing, the Prophet ﷺ, it's a weaker narration, but it's worth thinking about. The Prophet ﷺ said, any act that Bismillah is not said in the beginning of is devoid of any blessing. Now, that can have 2 meanings. Meaning, if you do something without saying Bismillah, you lose its blessing. Or it means anything that you can't say Bismillah in the beginning of doesn't have any blessing. Would you say Bismillah before watching pornography? I know that's a very crude question. But ask yourself, would you say Bismillah before watching pornography? Would you say Bismillah before masturbating? If the answer is no, I think you have your answer about whether or not this is the type of behavior that a Muslim should engage in. So inshallah, hang in there, be strong, be tough. It's really tough out there. It's really a struggle out there. But between your relationship with Allah, your relationship with the Quran, your relationship with your family, having good friends, and having some personal hobbies and activities that you enjoy, that are good and healthy and productive for you, inshallah, you'll make it through. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for all of us, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you a lot of strength. Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you very much for watching. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.